Welcome to the Stumble Across podcast. This is the podcast where I basically stumble across people online and invite them on for a chat, usually with me knowing very little about them, completely unprepared, completely unfiltered, often leading to uncovering the best stories. Now, in today's episode, I stumble across Amanda Lunsford, a canine behaviour consultant working with dogs that are showing fearful and aggressive behaviours. A very interesting story she has as well. We speak about her love for dogs and pets and how she first found that love. She is also very open about her upbringing in life coming through the foster care system. So if you like today's episode, don't forget to give a subscribe and leave a rating and review as well.
So my name is Amanda Lunsford. I'm a multi-accredited canine behavior consultant. And right now I exclusively work with dogs that are showing fearful and aggressive behaviors. So I do a lot of private sessions and also work with rescues in the area as well.
Now that must be, the first thing that comes into my head, it must be a pretty tricky job to do.
Yes and no. It's a niche, So I started out, of course, just doing obedience and, typical training stuff, but it can be difficult. It can be kind of tricky as well. I am really thankful for all my education, making sure that safety is always first, just because, if I get bit, it could be detrimental to my career. So I'm really grateful for all my education and meeting a lot of cool people within the field as well, kind of telling me their tips and tricks to helping people and their dogs.
Yeah. Well, before we kind of talk about what you do now, how did you get into that? Were you always like a pet person? Did you always have a pet around the house when you were younger?
Yeah, so I have a really unique past just because, so I actually grew up in the foster care system. I was the ward of state. So I was basically the state's child, moving around a lot. I didn't really have a lot of stability. And, I helped out cleaning kennels and shelters. Of course, a lot of my foster homes, they had dogs or cats. I really connected that way. My past experience actually is in sales and marketing. So I was in that for a really long time. And back in 2019, I opened my business because I did, pet sitting, just training on the side. It wasn't a lot of stuff. But then finally in 2019, I launched my business. And after getting a lot of different education and different fields of the pet professional world, I decided that working with these misunderstood dogs is actually really what fits me best, especially with my background, of growing up in the foster care system and being misunderstood.
Yeah.
So,
and what was that a hard time? I don't want to say it was a hard time of your life, because maybe if you were in that situation, it's all you kind of know. It's, you're going through it anyway, so you don't know any different.
Yeah, for sure. I'm really lucky. I feel like that I have grown up to be successful. I think that's a lot to do with a lot of the people that I grew up around, and they were really patient with me. I would say that it was difficult because, like I said, there wasn't a lot of stability. So I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't have, because I moved around a lot. And to be honest, I had a lot of anger issues. So I was also very aggressive and fearful, which didn't help any of the relationship connections that I had. And I knew that one day I would be able to survive that and do some good in the world. So while I was growing up in the foster care system, I ran into someone and they told me knowledge is power. So I really started focusing on reading books, getting, getting to know a ton of different people, getting to know their stories, because I really felt like people's stories was a lot of knowledge that we're missing out on. So if that answer is yes and no. A lot of people can say that it can be difficult. It definitely was in that moment. But I truly think that my past brought me exactly where I wanted to be, which is, working with these misunderstood dogs and helping people understand them a little bit more.
And I mean, going through all of that, you say like with like mixed emotions and maybe anger issues. I suppose that's kind of expected when you are, you're from pillar to post. You don't quite know where you stand at that point in time.
Yes, most definitely. Because when the house that I came from, there wasn't a lot of emotion regulation stuff. There wasn't any deep breathing. We really weren't taught how to handle our emotions. So I went through a ton of different therapy methods, really, to kind of understand what really fit me best. I went through hypnosis, EMDR. I went through CBT. I went through just a ton of different therapy methods to really understand what helped me most. So I think that a lot of anger issues was pretty normal, especially because kids picked on me quite often, because I wasn't dressed, in the popular clothing at the time. I really didn't have I was a 90s kid, so I didn't really have like even a MySpace or, anything like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was just this girl and because I was so nervous, I came on aggressively and I was like, I don't care about anyone. I don't want anyone to care about me. Kind of not showing my vulnerabilities to the world.
And it's such a generation thing that now you've learned how to cope with that, and you've learned that there are ways to be able to kind of cope with that. But whereas, generation before, that just wouldn't have been a thing.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I realize that nowadays too. So since I've healed from a lot of like the traumatic events that I went through, because I had some stuff that happened in my adulthood too, I have also realized that people are people. And just because, my parents at the time couldn't take care of me doesn't mean that they didn't mean well or anything like that. So that's kind of what they were taught. Going back on, and it's a generational thing for sure. They weren't taught how to deal with emotions. And I'm thankful for the people that have taught me that and through all the therapy that I've been through.
Yeah. And I mean, what you're saying there, it's so clear then how you got into the behavior training and behavior therapy kind of animals, of dogs. Do you remember the first point that you got involved in that?
I honestly can't remember quite when I got involved. I remember just really having a really strong connection with animals just because I felt like that they could understand me when I felt like no one else could understand me. So a lot of the dogs and the animals that I met while I was in the foster care system, we had this silent communication between each other. And it was just a moment of me getting to know the dogs and how they moved and their communication and getting to know them. And part of the therapy that I've been through was, I think it's called equine therapy. And that's where, you go and work with the horses, for the post-traumatic stress disorder stuff. And I have realized that working with these animals is kind of my therapy as well, because if we just continue that silent communication where I get to know them a lot more. So there wasn't really a specific time. I just remember always feeling like they could understand me when no one else in the world could.
And like when you mention that connection with animals, I mean, it is such a powerful thing because and I don't know about where you are, but certainly in the UK, it's a big thing where you bring like dogs or cats into like old people's homes, and they can connect, and because they can, they get emotion from animals, and
Yeah.
the other way around, animals can sense it as well.
Definitely. There's actually a lot of studies talking about academics and everything. So I'm currently going to college right now. I'm hoping to eventually get my master's in applied behavior. And there's a ton of benefits of humans having animals. We get oxytocin, which is really good for our brains. We get the dopamine, and it just makes us feel good to be able to cuddle and squish and all of that stuff with them too. Yeah.
Now, it must be also a hard thing um, when you have an animal that isn't behaving in such a way that is maybe normal as such. But I mean, where do you begin? Do you look at the past of, say, a dog who's not behaving well?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So, in regards to getting to know the animal, I actually talked to the owners for approximately about 30 to 45 minutes, really getting to know them, their routines, and also the human stress as well. Because by the time I get into a lot of these cases, humans are very stressed because some of these dogs may have bitten a child in the home, may have bitten, another dog in the home that they love. So I get to know them through their humans first. And it kind of looks weird after that. I spend about 5-10 minutes really just kind of, again, that silent communication. I always think of it almost like a dance. If I move back and they come forward, then I will move forward and kind of test out their space a little bit. And I try a few things as far as obedience training to understand their learning capabilities and understanding how fast they can pick up stuff. And then I look for their stress signals too, because dogs actually display a ton of stress signals that we don't pick up on as humans. So I learned that from them too. And I push them to the boundaries, seeing these stress signals. And then I talk to the human and kind of show them what their dog is doing. And it's so cool because then the humans are like, oh my gosh, my dog does that all the time. Yeah. And I'm like, yes, he's saying that we're stressed. And I use a lot of human analogies because I always tell people, just because my husband and we might have a disagreement and I might not be yelling at him, which can be like dog barking or growling, but I might make some sarcastic remarks, or just do a little side eye to him, or, it's those silent communication that we're kind of giving back and forth. And I think that we miss that a lot with dogs.
And we have this TV program in the UK where it's a guy who does just that. He goes into houses and he, finds what's going on with the dog and finds out these different things. And it is amazing where, like, it's someone just from the outside that they come in and they can see a whole different dog almost. They do things and then the dog just responds. Like, do you think it takes that person from the outside to take a look?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, I have met other trainers too that have gotten other trainers or other behavior consultants involved because sometimes we might be too close to the situation where we have our perspective of what's going on and our high stressors that are going on in the household, that it's really hard to understand what the animal is going through too sometimes.
And do you think it's just an excuse where people say, it's a certain breed of dog, so that's just the way they are?
I run into that a lot, where it might be the certain breed or it might be the certain age of the dog. Oh, it's a puppy, so they're doing this. It can be a lot of different reasons. And I always acknowledge what they're bred for genetically, because I do believe that, for hundreds, thousands of years, we've bred dogs. But the thing is we just stopped breeding them for the characteristics. We're more breeding for the aesthetics and that instead of the characteristics and traits. So that's why I lean a lot on the specific dog in front of me instead of, the type of breed it is.
And I suppose they all do respond in different ways. Like, are some quicker than others?
Yeah, most definitely. So what I am actually really most intrigued by is the predatory motor sequence, just because I feel like that all dogs, we really bred them mainly from that. So you have the scent dogs, the sight hounds, like greyhounds and such. That's going to be like the search, where they like to sniff or they like to scan their areas. And then the herding breeds, you might have like where they like to stalk and chase, but we stopped having the next sequence come in, which is those terriers. A lot of terrier breeds, they like to bite, and some of them like to dissect, just because they were bred to hunt the vermin, in the barns and in the areas and everything. So I look at the breeds mainly to find out their outlets to help them decompress, because I feel like since the 1980s, in the 1980s, there was a huge, change in the world and its consumerism. So we started watching TV more. We started playing the arcade games more. And that essentially caused a lot of frustration in dogs because they weren't spending as much time outside. And that's my job, is to kind of give them outlets, but in a human acceptable way. Of course, I don't want dogs dissecting the couch or, anything like that. But yeah, that's what I'll really look for within the breed type of things.
And so what do you do? Like, do you think every dog is able to follow those kind of instructions? Like if you walk into a house and, the dog's just not behaving well, is it possible for any dog to come around?
I always break down my cases in 3 different categories. So that's always going to be, safety is always first. So if I have a dog that's bitten a child, that's high safety risk. And then let's say the second category, that's going to be well-being. So happiness of the dog, happiness of the humans. On a 0 to 10 scale, where are they? And my first priority is to lower the stress level of the household, because no one can really learn new techniques or methods or anything if everyone's stressed out at the max. So we discuss that. And then afterwards, I'll go into the resources. That's time, money, and environment. Because if someone lives in an apartment building, it's going to be a different training technique than if I had someone that lived out in the country. And by the time people get to me, unfortunately, they spend a ton of money on training, so that they really don't have a lot of money, that's available to them. So I have different, things that would be available to them so they can take videos instead of having a private consult. And then I also talk about the time frame too. So going back onto whether it is acceptable or whether I think that dogs can, it really depends on the time as well. So after we break everything down, let's say if it was a dog biting a child, or a dog attacking another dog in the home, how much time is a human able to work on this? And then we have to have a discussion of, okay, well, what are the other options? Do we have where they can go to a family member's house for a week or 2 or something like that, so they can get a break, or, can they go to a friend's house? It's a bunch of different situations, but it really depends on the bite level too that's going on. But surprisingly, I mean, a lot of the time when working on cases, I hope and wish people would get a hold of me before the dog really does damage, on a human being or dog. So I think yes and no to, I know that's a long answer, but yes and no. I don't think that every dog can. I think that some dogs that pathologically too, it's really rare for me to come by, but they might have pathological issues. So it really depends on the threshold.
Yeah. And do you think some people just don't know how to take care of their pets? Because we had this big campaign with the Dogs Trust charity that we have here of, it's not just for Christmas, and people who buy them as gifts, so to speak, or, if we had COVID during there, we had lockdowns, people were buying puppies, just to have in the house with them to keep them company. And some people just don't realize what they're taking on.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good point too, because I believe that a lot of people are so stressed because we are social animals. So we will do what other people tell us, or what we see on TV and stuff like that. And then we also, let's say if I've had this where, a grandchild has bought their parents a Labrador. And the Labrador is it needs a lot of exercise and a lot of needs that need to be met. So then that's when I think about the resources too of, okay, well, how much money do you have? Because you might need a dog walker or daycare or someone like that to be involved as well. So I see that a lot, but I also try to break it down to where it's practical and simple for humans. Because I think that we might make things more difficult than what they can be. You know, I've had some dogs that have been under quarantine, so they can't leave the house because of a dog bite, but it might be like a Australian Shepherd that's very active. So then we need to find ways to exercise them in the house. So I have clients that might have like physical disabilities that they can't hold a leash very well. And that's my job as a, behavior consultant to kind of pivot and work with them and talk about solutions within their means.
And do you have any pets yourself? Do you have any dogs yourself?
Yes, I have she's like I always call them bully mixes or pit bull mixes because those can be categorized by so many different things, breeds. But yes, and her name is Applejack. So
Applejack, nice.
Yes, so she's about 4 years old. She's probably one of the laziest dogs ever. I let her sleep in the bed with me and I let her eat pizza and all of that stuff. But she's pretty well behaved too, because I'll bring her into schools to talk about dog safety, and I'll bring her to parks to talk about dog safety and those type of things too. It's
amazing how they can react to emotion as well, like how they can pick up on things.
Yes, their noses are amazing because we sweat. We smell differently depending on the sweat. So if we're stressed, they can definitely smell it. And, our body language. I always tell people too, it's not only because they can sense it, but also we start acting weird. Dogs, they're always watching us. And when we start fidgeting or raising our voice, or sometimes if we're walking slow, I always tell my clients that have reactive dogs or dogs that have big feelings towards the world, I tell them, start watching your dogs instead of watching the environment, because they start walking slowly and the dog is like, why are you walking weird? And it puts them on alert as well.
And for people on the other end of the frame where people are terrified of dogs, that's the one thing that maybe they don't think about. It's their reactions as well.
Yes. Yeah. That's why a lot of the clients that I have too, I'm like, okay, so this is the safety protocol that I would have, because some of the dogs that I work with, they have a tendency sometimes to bite people that are in the home. And we want to make sure that everyone is safe. And I tell a lot of my clients too, I don't want people to isolate or avoid situations. So I guide them through how to do things safely. But I will never tell them to train their guest what to do, because some people are like, oh, don't worry, I love dogs. And then they'll make a wrong move, or like you said, they're scared of the dog, so they might move weird. So that's why a lot of the clients that I work with, I'm like, okay, so this is how you would handle the situation. I never tell people to tell guests. And I learned that early on in my career.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. It's very, very interesting. Where do you kind of see yourself taking that now? I mean, I guess for you, it's endless because there's so many dogs out there that need help.
Yes, thank you for asking. So as of right now, myself and two other ladies, we are actually working on starting a nonprofit to help other dog owners in the area with behavior issues, just educating people. And also I hope to get my master thesis done on, studying heart rate variability and how that affects dogs' behavior issues. And there's just a ton of things, and I just want to help people because I feel like, again, that these dogs are misunderstood. So I don't really have anything on social media because I'm horrible at that right now. But to me, it just takes time to like post and all that stuff when I'm like such a person that likes to be face to face with people.
Yeah.
So I plan on, doing more social media posts and blog posts and just educating people and helping them understand these dogs that are really misunderstood creatures that are having a hard time communicating with the world around them.
And do you have like a kind of a website that people can go to?
Yeah. So they can find me on Ruff. That's RUF as in Frank, F as in Frank, 2readydogtraining.com. Otherwise, I do have social media, but I'm never posting until August. And that's going to be Ruff period 2, like TO period ready DT for dog training. So that's where they can find me. And I'll be a lot more active. I have a bunch of stuff coming out in August. I will be launching a reactive dog course online that's going to be more affordable because I feel like that reactivity is just something that a lot of people are experiencing right now.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're going to be super busy.
Yes.
And, the best of luck with it all.
Thank you so much for having me. And I love your podcast. I love the idea. And I wish you the best of luck as well. Thank you so much, Peter.
Thanks so much to Amanda there. A brilliant story. And what a connection she has when she's working with dogs as well. So if you do like today's episode, don't forget, hit that subscribe button. And of course, leave a rating and review as well. Until next time.